Tonight, the president-elect doubles down on his defense secretary pick.
He'll just keep talking to Republican senators, trying to win them over one by one.
Can Pete Hegseth rally enough support on Capitol Hill? Plus, as police look for the motive in the bizarre killing of an insurance CEO on a New York street, writing etched into the bullets may hold a clue.
The words may refer to a strategy used by insurance companies to deny coverage to patients.
And the latest jobs report and how it may impact the American economy. All this and more tonight on Faith Nation. President-elect Trump standing by his pick for defense secretary despite pressure from Senate Republicans. Good evening in Washington, I'm Jenna Browder. Trump is reiterating his support for Pete Hegseth, his embattled nominee for Secretary of Defense. Today, Trump posted on social media that the former Fox News host is doing very well and will be a fantastic addition to his administration. Hegseth is facing a difficult challenge to convince senators that he's the right person to lead the Department of Defense. His nomination overshadowed by a swarm of allegations of financial mismanagement, sexual misconduct, and alcohol abuse. All week, Hegseth has been meeting with Republican senators on Capitol Hill to win over their support. He can only afford to lose the support of 3 of them to still get confirmed. CBN News senior White House correspondent Kelly Wright is here to discuss the latest. So Kelly, the question that I'm wondering, will he continue to fight? There's a lot coming at him. And what's the latest from President Trump?
Well, truth be told, Pete is a fighter. He's a combat veteran. He will continue to fight, especially now getting this support publicly from the man who actually appointed him to this position, or at least wants to see him get this position, and that's President-elect Donald Trump. He is standing by his man, reaffirming his support for Hegseth. In a statement that he made earlier today on his Truth social media site, the president-elect stated the following: Pete Hegseth is doing very well. His support is strong and deep, much more so than the fake news would have you believe. He was a great student, Princeton, Harvard educated, with a military state of mind. He will be a fantastic high-energy Secretary of Defense, one who leads with charisma and skill. Pete is a winner, and there is nothing that can be done to change that. Well, having stated that, that is another reason why Pete Hegseth is in the fight for his life to get this nomination. Of course, he still has hurdles to climb, most notably with Senator Joni Ernst and Senator Tammy Duckworth. But again, he's talking about the problems that have come up, the innuendo that he says it will not be tried by the public, he states. And he also says that he's a man of redemption, that America likes a redemption story. He finds his redemption, as he publicly stated, through Jesus Christ.
Yeah, he's been strong on that in several interviews he's done. So amid the Hegseth battle, Kelly, 2 very well-known billionaires have been up on Capitol Hill, got a pretty warm reception this week.
I call them the billionaires tag team.
Okay. And
they are, of course, representing DOGE, which is the president-elect's choice for having a more smart America and save for America. And, of course, DOGE is the Department of Government equity and actually looking at how they can actually eliminate some of the waste that's going on. They had a very successful meeting, welcomed with open arms by mostly Republicans, some Democrats. And as a result of that, they are now pushing forward. Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, stating that this is a good time where they can see a bipartisan effort to reduce the $36 trillion debt that is affecting Capitol Hill.
Let's focus on another matter. What do we know, Kelly, about President Biden mulling over some of these blanket pardons for people who President Trump has been critical of?
Well, fresh on the heels of the press briefing that took place today on the White House, the president is, in fact, mulling that over. Karine Jean-Pierre talking about the fact that President-elect Donald Trump had made statements in the past about some of his enemies and perhaps going after them should he go on to become president of the United States. Kash Patel is someone that scares a lot of Democrats because of the statements that he has made, what he would do if he does, in fact, become the FBI director. So because of that, the president of the United States is considering mulling over possible blanket pardons for people like Anthony Fauci, as well as Lynn Cheney, who served on the January 6th committee. And then there's, of course, Senator-elect of California, Adam Schiff. All of these notable critics of the President of the United States who's coming in January 20th.
Yeah, so we know President-elect Trump will be making his first overseas trip or foreign trip very soon here. Where is he going?
He's going to Paris, France, to actually be there for the reopening of the famous Notre Dame. And Notre Dame has been there for 900 years. We all remember in 2019 that devastating fire that took place that destroyed much of the internal structure. They have rebuilt that. He will be there. By the way, ironically, President Biden was invited, but due to a scheduling conflict, he cannot attend. But First Lady, Dr. Joe Biden, will be there as well. And we're told that President-elect Trump will have a chance to meet Volodymyr Zelensky of Ukraine again, as well as French President Macron.
It's nice to see this happening around Christmas time.
Yeah.
All right, Kelly, thank you.
Thank you.
Well, now to the latest in the search for the man accused of gunning down United Healthcare's CEO. With the manhunt now in its third day, investigators appear to be closing in on the identity of the gunman. Police released this photo of the suspect, a man smiling in a hooded jacket. The images were taken from a hostel in Manhattan where he reportedly used a fake ID. Investigators believe the suspect arrived in New York on November 24th by a bus that originated in Atlanta. On Wednesday, he reportedly waited hours for United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson before walking up behind him, firing several shots and fleeing the scene. Shell casings found by police have the words "deny, defend, depose" written on them, echoing a 2010 book, Delay, Deny, Defend: Why Insurance Companies Don't Pay Claims and What You Can Do About It. Police have not yet revealed a motive for the shooting, but the evidence so far has some experts believing it points to a grudge against United Healthcare or the insurance industry.
I think this shooter is trying to send a message that someone, either himself or a loved one or someone close to him, has been harmed by this insurance company.
Investigators are looking into whether the shooter left the city by bus after the shooting. Authorities are testing DNA recovered from the scene. Tim Miller joins us now. He is a former Secret Service agent and the founder and president of Lionheart. Tim, welcome. So it seems like it's only a matter of time before they catch this shooter.
Yeah, certainly there were a lot of mistakes made, a lot of forensic paths that they can run down, and they're all over it, that's for sure. The NYPD investigators are some of the best in the world, and it demonstrates, though, how quickly things can turn violent these days. And certainly there are going to be a lot of questions that need to be answered about why would someone at that profile not have some security presence with them, but all that will come to light in the days ahead.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see this story develop. So the shooting, Tim, has the business world really on edge. Black Cloak, which is a digital executive protection firm, says there's been a sharp rise in attacks against executives and their families over the past 5 years. Biomedical, pharmaceutical leaders are really the most targeted. Why is this? Why this spike?
Well, remember that the head of the organization represents the entire organization, and folks that are angry with the insurance companies, healthcare, whatever, pharmaceuticals especially, they recognize they can strike a very significant blow to the entire organization by taking out the leadership. We consult with a lot of those companies, and I find most of the CEOs, they don't want the pomp and circumstance. They just want to be able to live their lives. But unfortunately, as we saw this week, that's changing in America, and the heads of the organizations, the leadership, they need to be intact so that they can lead the organizations.
Do you think the 2024 election had anything to do with this and factors into some of this anger and hatred that we're seeing?
Yeah, that is a good point. We're more divided than we've ever been. And unfortunately, that division is turning violent. I mean, we just saw this week, we had thank God, a church attack stop in White Settlement by a man who was disgruntled, mentally ill. And unfortunately, we had a school shooting at a Christian school where 2 kindergartners were shot. Right now, authorities think that may be related to the Palestinian cause. But here's the problem with all that. It spurs others on. You know, we learned in the Secret Service that when there's an assassination attempt, it spurs others on to try to do it. And unfortunately, these high-profile cases will spur others on to violence as well.
So do you think we'll see more of this type of thing? Should these executives be taking more precautions, adding security?
They absolutely should, and that's just out of wisdom. You know, one of the things I don't ever traffic in is fear, but it is important now that we're wise and prepared, and that's not just for them, that's for all of us. We're seeing things occur on the streets of America we've never seen before, and it's important that all of us, especially believers, that we're wise and prepared and we're alert so that we can hopefully make a difference, not just in helping ourselves, but with others.
Yeah, you're so right. It's facing communities all over the country. I remember pretty recently a man was driving down K Street here in Washington and got shot and died. Very tragic. All right, Tim, thank you so much. Tim Miller with Lionheart. Great to see you. Thank you.
Great to see you. Thanks for having me.
Tonight, a new development in the battle between TikTok and the federal government. A federal appeals court today decided to uphold a federal ban on the platform, though the case will likely go to the Supreme Court. CBN News Capitol Hill correspondent Michelle London has been tracking this story. London, what's the latest in this case?
Well, Jenna, today's ruling is part of a years-long saga over the federal government's claims that TikTok poses a national threat here in the U.S., which all came to a head in April when President Biden stepped in and signed a law which would require TikTok to break ties with its China-based parent company ByteDance or be banned by mid-January. A month later, TikTok fought back, filing a lawsuit against the government, saying the law goes against the First Amendment and unfairly targets the platform, which brings us to today's ruling.
So why did the Court of Appeals for the District of Columbia, why did they agree to side with the government on this?
Well, the court's opinion states in part that the First Amendment exists to protect free speech in the United States. But in this case, the government acted, quote, solely to protect that freedom from a foreign adversary nation and to limit that adversary's ability to gather data on people. Earlier, Senator Mark Warner spoke with CBN and voiced his support toward the federal government's stance against the platform.
One, because TikTok repeatedly has shown that it can keep American data, personal data about users. And two, there is no more powerful propaganda tool than TikTok. About 40% of young people between 18 and 24 get all their news from TikTok. And one of the geniuses about TikTok is, it kind of knows what you like before you know.
So Michelle, we hear a lot about the TikTok ban. What actually would it look like in practice if it were to go into place in January?
Well, Jenna, the law states that TikTok only faces a risk of being banned entirely if the company refuses to adhere to its first requirement, which is complete separation from its parent company, ByteDance. The panel of judges says giving most of its ownership over to the U.S. is the least restrictive way for the government to advance its compelling national security interest. But a lot could still take place before that law is set to go into effect come January 1st. TikTok and ByteDance will likely appeal to the Supreme Court. Its spokesperson released this statement saying, in part, the Supreme Court has an established historical record of protecting Americans' right to free speech, and we expect they'll do just that on this important constitutional issue. Meanwhile, President-elect Donald Trump, who tried to ban TikTok during his first term, is now voicing his support for the social media platform. During his presidential campaign, he promised he would work to save it. Jenna?
All right, Michelle London, thank you very much. And coming up, the numbers are in. Job growth surged last month. What it means for you right after this. Welcome back. Good news for the economy. Job creation is back on track. After storms, and a big strike slowed things down a bit, the economy added 227,000 jobs in November, according to the new numbers from the Labor Department. Even better, revisions from the past 2 months added another 56,000 jobs to the mix. The unemployment rate did inch up slightly to 4.2%, but overall, it's a sign of a steady growth. A solid report heading into the holidays. All right, Mark Hamrick joins us now. He is Washington Bureau Chief and Senior Economic Analyst for Bankrate. Mark, good to see you. So we had what looked like a good jobs report today, but it was limited to just 3 categories. And the job market has been slowing down since early this year. What do you make of it all, Mark?
I think this is a very respectable report, Jenna, in the context of a cooling job market, in the context of an economy that has performed better than expected over the past couple of years. Remember all the forecasts for recession in early 2022. A recession didn't occur, but Americans are still aggravated and their personal finances are undermined by elevated prices. You're right, there were 3 categories that did better than others, but those weren't the only ones. Among those that were leading the way were healthcare and social assistance. We had leisure and hospitality, including bars and restaurants, and government. By the way, that's not the federal government. It was state and local governments adding jobs, so those are dispersed around the country. Elsewhere, we had a total of more than 30,000 jobs in construction and manufacturing, and we had transportation and warehousing accounting for some of this. So I think it's a respectable mix, but we also did see, as you mentioned at the top, an increase in the unemployment rate back to 4.2%, where it was in August. We were at 4.3 the month before that, and it remains to be seen whether we might see a further increase in the jobless rate.
The big issue in economic and business circles is interest rate cuts. Mark, how many times do you expect to see the Fed cut rates over the next year or so?
Well, right now the expectation, Jenna, is one of more certainty, and that is that we'll have a rate cut at the December 18th announcement from the Federal Reserve, and that likely will be a rate cut of 1/4% after a total of 3/4% in the past 2 rate cuts. Then it gets a lot more murky in 2025 because we need to know what's going on with the performance of the economy, and that includes a high degree of ambition with the new administration and Congress, and a lot of policy uncertainty associated with possible tax cut, possible imposition of tariffs and deportations, which have economic impacts as well. But right now the assumption is that perhaps we have about another 0.75% increase in 2025. That's a decrease, I should say. But the Fed isn't going to promise that, but they may pencil it in with the document that they release on December 18th to give us an idea about what could happen.
Yeah, we'll be watching for December 18th. Mark, how much could those rate cuts help the economy and consumers at home?
Well, first of all, they'd be most immediately felt, I think, in areas of borrowing rates. And so if we get further easing in things like credit card rates, car loans, for example, personal loans, that's helpful. At the same time, there's a negative impact because it can bring down the rate of returns on savings. The other part is, let's remember that the Fed isn't the only determinant of interest rates. The bond market does that as well, and that is leading to stickiness with mortgage rates, which have remained, I would say, frustratingly high.
So just a few weeks left in December. What's your outlook for the overall economy in the year ahead, Mark?
Well, it's a lot of uncertainty, Jenna, but I think ambitions and hopes are riding high that it will be a productive year. The U.S. Economy has proven more robust and resilient than many predicted, and so don't bet against the United States economy.
All right, Mark Hamrick from Bankrate. Always nice to see you, Mark. Have a great weekend.
Thank you.
Okay, up next, the Middle East on edge as Syria's civil war reignites. How Israel is bracing for potential new threats.
Download the CBN News app. One place for all of your news. Breaking news alerts. Watch CBN News Channel live. CBN News, because truth matters. Get the CBN News app today.
Welcome back. Big developments in the Middle East. Israel is ramping up its military presence along the border with Syria, where rebel forces have reignited the country's civil war. They are pushing ahead with a stunning new offensive against the government, raising tensions across the region. Tonight, the rebel forces have their eyes on the key city of Homs. A successful capture of the city will mark a major blow to President Bashar al-Assad's regime. Israel says it's closely monitoring the situation and is prepared for any scenario. According to reporting from Axios, Jerusalem is concerned about the potential for a radical Islamist takeover of Syria. Iran, which backs Assad, says it will send missiles and drones to Syria. Jerusalem fears these weapons could end up in the hands of Iranian proxies and pose a threat to the Jewish state. Now to another conflict. Russia says it will use any means to prevent defeat in its war against Ukraine. But the Kremlin is open to talks with President-elect Trump. CBN's John Jessup has been in Ukraine on a reporting trip. He sat down with President Zelensky, who is optimistic about working with the Trump administration come January.
I think we will be able to understand one another. We did have phone calls, we did have a meeting, and our teams are working together and working more, and we will be looking for all the opportunities to end that war as soon as possible and as just as possible.
And Faith Nation will bring you more of that exclusive interview with President Zelensky next week. Still ahead, a Christmas centerpiece in New York City comes to life.
Download the CBN News app, 24/7 news from a Christian perspective at home or on the road. One place for all of your news. Breaking news alerts. Set daily prayer goals and pray for news stories. Read the most important news and watch CBN News Channel live. CBN News, because truth matters. Go to cbnnewsapp.com to get the app today.
Finally tonight, a holiday tradition in New York City. A crowd of thousands braved the cold temperatures and gathered to see the 92nd annual lighting of the Rockefeller Center tree. The 74-foot-tall spruce came from Massachusetts and is wrapped in 5 miles of multicolored string lights. Beautiful. After the holidays, the tree will be turned into lumber and used by Habitat for Humanity for home building. The ceremony marks the traditional start of Christmas in New York City. It will be lit every night now through mid-January. And we're going to leave it on that note for this week. Thank you for joining us. We hope you have a great weekend. We'll see you back here on Monday.